Hello Internet, my name is Lave, and with July 20th rapidly approaching, the 50-year anniversary since the moon landing, I watched another documentary featuring the landmark moment in human history, following on from Apollo 11, which I reviewed like a couple of weeks ago. If you want to check that out, you can click right here. This one is a much more personal movie, as the title would suggest. It's focusing in on the man behind the name, looking at his early life as a boy building model planes, to his engineering career, to his time in the Navy and as a test pilot, plus the Gemini and Apollo missions, and the aftermath, including the toll it took on his family life. So coming off the back of Apollo 11, which I have to say was one of my favourite cinema experiences I've had so far this year, I wasn't expecting this one to be as enthralling, but it is a really solid and thorough insight into the man who was a real gent and a real classy guy. It takes much more of a traditional documentary approach, with floating head interviews with friends and family, those who knew him best, and it interjects them with his own words, narrated by Harrison Ford, himself a keen aviator. Now, when I think of Harrison Ford and narration, my first thought was, oh god, like Blade Runner, where he famously didn't really care for the narration in that, but he's really good in this. It's nice to hear Han Solo saying the words of Neil Armstrong. That's pretty incredible, but I have to say it's more what Neil is saying more than the way that Harrison Ford delivers it, but he's still good though. As you would expect, they've gathered a lot of material to tell their story, not the amazing 70mm footage they used in Apollo 11. This one has more 8mm home footage and TV broadcasts, retaining that grainy texture to it. I even think they added some VHS style distortion to some of the scene transitions. However, I did get a sense of deja vu, because some of the footage that they've used in this does also appear in Apollo 11, which is understandable. I mean, there's only a finite amount of footage available to them, so some of the results are going to be the same. That didn't bother me at all, but I did get a familiar feeling because it's obviously covering a lot of the same ground as Damien Chazelle's First Man, which was released last year. Mark Armstrong even talks about that scene where he has the conversation with his dad and his brother before he goes off to do his mission, and he does say that it was a matter-of-fact conversation with his dad saying, I expect to come home, and they were like, oh okay dad, see you in a couple of weeks. But there was a slight suggestion, he doesn't say this directly about First Man, but he definitely tries to get across that it wasn't like stoical, and even in the Q&A after the film he makes a point of saying that his dad wasn't a recluse, as was maybe portrayed by the media at the time. He just didn't want the limelight. And this documentary does effectively show the more humorous side to him, especially after the mission at a few of his public appearances. But like First Man, it also highlights the risks involved and the anguish he suffered at the loss of friends and colleagues throughout his career, and obviously his daughter Karen. I don't remember her being referred to as Muffy in First Man, his nickname for her, but having seen that, I knew what happened to her. And it was really heartbreaking and devastating to see home footage of her knowing what was going to happen, and seeing how devastating it was for the whole family. And it is heartbreaking. But it did make me think that First Man got a lot of it right, but it also made me wonder about the other scene in First Man, which I don't want to spoil, but there is a really like arrow to the heart moment in the end of that film, which might not have happened. It's basically was done on an educated guess, but this film does lend some credence to it in a scene when a reporter is interviewing Janet Armstrong outside their house, and he asks her if Neil took any possessions to the moon, and she says, that's private, I'm not going to tell. And I was like, oh, I just so hope it's true. I don't really have any negatives for this one. It's mostly told chronologically, with the only exception being the launch of Apollo 11 shown within 15 minutes, but that's just an observation, not a criticism. I did, however, think that it took a couple of cheap shots at Buzz Aldrin's expense. For example, when they get back to Earth and they embark on their world tour, the film makes a point of saying that all three of them weren't attention seekers, at least at that time, and the shot lingers on Buzz, and I was like, yeah, that was a joke at his expense. But then I suppose the film does make up for it by telling us what Neil really thought of Buzz in his own words, narrated by Harrison. And he says that Buzz was an intelligent guy, highly experienced, a highly skilled pilot, and cool and calm under pressure, and he just simply didn't recognise his eccentricities, which I think also shows what a classy, humble guy Neil Armstrong really was. So that's my thoughts on Armstrong, and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker now. Like I said, it's a really solid and thorough and thought-provoking documentary, which actually does serve as a really good companion piece to First Man and Apollo 11. I think if you want to experience the mission, then definitely watch Apollo 11. If you want to know more about the man, then obviously watch Armstrong. So thanks very much for checking out this video. I also watched a documentary that BBC released last night called 8 Days to the Moon and Back, which actually recreates some of the scenes with actors, and it also has some of the footage from Apollo 11 and this one as well. But let me know what documentaries you've seen about the Apollo mission, and let me know, I might want to check them out as well. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you can, give it a like, and don't forget to share the Lave. Ooh, it's about 100 degrees in here, so I'm glad that's done.